When people use the word icebreaker, they're usually referring to activities that warm up the room. But sometimes the fastest way to warm up the room is just to ask people if they even want to be there. In this video, I'm going to share 3 simple activities that check in with people about how they're feeling. We'll start with a really simple 5-minute activity and then move through to one that really transforms the room. You'll want to stick around for that one. Hi, I'm Kerri Price. I'm the founder of the Facilitators Network, and I use the principles of deliberate generosity to make sure that no meeting, workshop, or community conversation is ever wasted. I've been facilitating for 20 odd years, and in that time I've led thousands of meetings and workshops, and now I spend most of my time helping other trainers and facilitators do that work well. If you stumbled across this video, you're probably looking for icebreakers that aren't cringy. And let's face it, there's plenty of cringy icebreakers out there. Instead of sharing traditional icebreaker activities, I'm going to share 3 activities that get to the heart of how people are feeling, because when you really listen to people and understand why they're in the room, that's the fastest way to warm them up. The first activity is super simple. You can do it in just 3 or 4 minutes, and it's a 3-word check-in. So how it works is once people are all gathered, I give them about 30 seconds to get present to how they're feeling in that moment. And then on a post-it note, I ask them to jot down just 3 words to sum it up. Now, what makes this exercise so powerful is that 3 words means they have to get really clear about how are they actually feeling in this moment. They might be feeling a bit tired, maybe they didn't have a good night's sleep, but they might also be feeling excited to be there. What this exercise does is it helps people realize that they can have less desirable emotions and super desirable emotions and hold both of those things in tension. And they get to choose which of those 3 words that they really want to lean into for the rest of the day. Once people have jotted them down on a post-it note or a piece of paper, I then invite people to popcorn those words into the room. And I say popcorn, which simply means people get to share those words in a time that works for them. Let's avoid going around the room and waiting 20 minutes before the last person in the circle gets a chance to speak. The second activity I like to use is called What a Ride. And this activity is still about how you're feeling about being in the room, but it encourages a little bit more movement. So how I set this up is I use a rope like this. It can be as long, as thick, or thin as you like. And I weave it out on the floor in the shape of a roller coaster, up, down, twisty turns, wherever you'd like it to go. Then I simply invite people to stand on the roller coaster based on how they're feeling today. Now, what's interesting is people can make the different parts of the roller coaster mean different things. So you might have 2 people standing on the same spot, but it's representing different types of feelings. For one person, standing right at the top of a slope going down is exciting. For another person, it's absolutely terrifying. So I invite people to jump up, stand on the roller coaster to represent how they're feeling, and then I give people just a minute or 2 to turn to their neighbour and talk about why they've chosen to stand where they've chosen to stand. And then again, like the 3-word check-in, I invite people to popcorn in their responses so I get a sense of what's going on for people. Now, if you're doing this online or you're doing it in an environment where perhaps you can't roll out a rope, you can just put up a slide that looks something like this, a roller coaster, and invite people to mark on the picture where they would like to sit. So if it's an in-person workshop, I might do it on a whiteboard. They can come up and mark it on. If it's online, I'll do it on a slide and invite people to use the annotate tool. Same game, same activity, just using it in a slightly different way. The third activity I like to use to get a sense of how people are feeling in the room can be a game changer. And I call this the happiness continuum. I don't always use this in every workshop, but if I get a sense that maybe some people don't want to be here, It's an absolute must-do for me. So how it works is I explain to people that there's an imaginary continuum running through the room. At one end of the continuum is, I'm so happy to be here, I'm so stoked, I've been waiting for this for weeks, I am absolutely pumped to get started. At the other end of the continuum is, I would rather be anywhere but here. And then there's a whole lot of spaces in between. I invite people to jump up and find the space on the continuum that represents how they're feeling as they come into the room. Now, what's surprising is that people are really honest. People don't make this up. If they're not happy to be there, they tell you on this continuum. So once people have found their space, I give them a couple of minutes to turn to their neighbour or get into small groups of 3 or 4 and have a quick chat about why they've chosen to stand where they want to stand. And then I get some people to share that back into the room. Now, I deliberately start at the end of the continuum, which is people who are happy and excited to be in the room, and I get a few people to share why they're so excited to be there. And then as I move down to the other end of the continuum, I make a big deal about saying, this is the end of the continuum I really want to hear from. If you don't want to be in the room, I'd really love to know why, so I can figure out a way to make it better for you. Now, what's really interesting is people who choose to stand at that end of the continuum have really valid reasons for being there. You might hear them say something like, oh, I'm so snowed under at work, like taking a whole day out for a training or a workshop, that just feels unproductive when I've got so much work going on. Or they might say something like, oh, we've done this values conversation every year for the last 3 years and nothing's changed. Like, no wonder they don't want to be in the room. Once I know that, once I know what their resistance is, I have the opportunity to meet them halfway. And so I might say something like, wow, if I was really snowed under at work, I don't know that I'd like to be in the room either. So it's my intention that everything we share today, everything we do today is going to help you feel less overwhelmed when you go back to the office. Now, they might not move from one end of the continuum completely to the other end, but just being heard and listened to is going to shuffle them a few spaces down. At that point, I also remind people that I'm not completely responsible for what happens in this space. If they have to be in the room, then actually how they choose to show up will make a difference as to how worthwhile it is too. If icebreakers are about warming people up, then really listening to people's concerns and whether or not they want to be in the room is a great way to do that. But it's not the only way to do that. If you want more ideas for starting your session well and really warming people up, head over to my website where you can download a free resource, this book, 45 activities that help build connection and spark conversation in a group setting. The link's in the description below.